Okay, so if you're a parent, you know the screen time battle. I mean, it's a daily thing, right? Our kids are living and learning online. But what if the rules of that whole game are about to get a major rewrite? Well, the US government just dropped a huge new report on child safety online, and believe me, it could be a real game changer for parents, for kids, and for the tech companies. So what's in it? Let's dive in and find out.
All right, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the digital safety challenge itself. Then we'll unpack the online risks they're talking about. From there, we'll get into a practical toolkit for parents and a blueprint for the platforms. And finally, we'll talk about the path forward.
So let's start with the big question. Why is the government getting involved so heavily right now? I mean, for a long time, it felt like protecting kids online was pretty much all on parents, right? But what this report is saying loud and clear is that the problem is just too big now for any one family to handle. It's moved from a personal struggle to a full-blown national public health issue.
I mean, that feeling, it hits home for so many of us, doesn't it? That constant back and forth, the worry about what they're actually seeing online, and that feeling that you're literally fighting against algorithms that are designed to keep them glued to the screen. What this report does is it validates all of that concern. It's basically the government saying, hey parents, we hear you. You need more than just tips and tricks. You need real systemic change.
And let's be clear, this isn't just some random committee that's going to write a report and disappear. No, this is a high-level task force. They've pulled in the heavy hitters here. We're talking Health and Human Services, the Department of Commerce, the Surgeon General, even the Department of Justice. They've all come together with one single goal: to start treating the downsides of online platforms like the serious public health problem it is. Okay, so let's get into the heart of it. What exactly did this task force identify as the biggest threats? Because it goes way beyond just too much screen time. We are talking about some really serious risks to our kids' well-being. So a huge piece of this comes from the U.S. Surgeon General's advisory from 2023, and that thing sounded a massive alarm. It directly linked heavy social media use to a whole list of mental health risks for kids. Things like higher rates of depression and anxiety, terrible sleep, major body image issues. And the key thing here is, these aren't just vague feelings or worries. These are documented public health concerns. And then the report gets into a deeply, deeply disturbing trend: how new tech is being weaponized to hurt kids. This quote here is, well, it's stark. It shows how AI is already being used to create what's known as CSAM, or child sexual abuse material. It's just a horrifying misuse of technology, and it adds a whole new, severe threat to what was already a dangerous landscape. And you know, this isn't just the government being worried. When the task force opened the floor for public comments, they were absolutely flooded. Over 500 written comments came pouring in. And these were from everybody: parents, tech companies, advocacy groups, academics. It just goes to show you how deeply this issue cuts across the entire country. Okay, so after laying out all those really serious risks, the good news is the report doesn't just, leave parents hanging. It pivots to something super practical, a toolkit. And it's designed to be an empowering framework for families, not just another long list of don't do this rules. And it's a really simple but powerful idea. It's built around 3 C's: child, content, and calm. The whole point isn't to give you a one-size-fits-all rulebook, because that never works, right? It's to give you a way to think about this stuff, a model you can tailor to your own family. So let's break down what each of those means. Okay, the first C is child. And honestly, this is the most important starting point. It's all about remembering that every kid is different. Your child's personality, where they are developmentally, their unique interests, all of that shapes their experience online. So instead of just laying down generic rules, the report says you got to understand your child's why. Why are they so drawn to that one game or that one app? Because that understanding, that's the real foundation for guiding them. Next up is content. And this is that classic quality over quantity idea. It's not just about how many hours they're on a screen, it's about what they're doing. Is the content they're consuming creative? Is it educational? Is it connecting them with their friends in a good way? Or is it just passive, isolating, or even harmful? The quality of that content is absolutely key to their digital well-being. And the third C is calm. And wow, this is a big one for a lot of us. The report basically advises against using a screen as your go-to tool for soothing a child, when they're having a meltdown. Instead, the focus should be on helping kids build their own strategies for calming down, for self-regulating and managing those big emotions without needing to immediately grab a phone or a tablet. And a huge part of this whole framework is how you talk about it. The report even gives these great concrete examples, like this conversation starter.
And what's so powerful about this is that it's not an accusation, right? It's not, you're on your phone too much. It's an invitation. It's collaborative, it's non-judgmental, and it invites your kid to be part of the solution. That's a game changer.
But look, this toolkit for parents, it's just one piece of the puzzle. The report is crystal clear on this. The burden can't just be on families. A huge part of the solution has to come from a fundamental shift from the tech platforms themselves.
The core idea they're pushing is something called safety by design. And the best way to think about it is like building a car. You don't just add seatbelts and airbags as an afterthought, right? No! They are built into the car's fundamental design from the very beginning. The report argues that's exactly how online platforms should treat child safety, as a non-negotiable, built-in feature part of their core architecture.
And that, right there, is a massive philosophical shift. For years, the business model has been all about maximizing engagement, keeping eyes on screens, and collecting data for profit. That's the old model. This new safety by design model completely flips the script. It demands that the well-being of young users becomes the #1 goal from the very start.
And we're not talking about vague suggestions here. The report lays out really specific, actionable demands for these tech companies. They're calling for things like strictly limiting how much data they collect on minors, which cuts down on privacy risks. They recommend disabling features like geolocation that can be exploited. They're insisting that platforms have to actively look for risks of child sexual exploitation and abuse on their services. And finally, they need to put in place robust content moderation that actually, works to protect kids.
So, where does all this leave us? Well, the report's conclusion is pretty clear. Making the internet safer for kids isn't just one group's job. It's going to take a shared, all-hands-on-deck approach.
This quote from one of the contributors really gets to the heart of the matter. It points out this fundamental conflict of interest, right? When your whole business model is built on keeping people hooked, child safety can easily become a second-tier priority. And the implication is pretty clear. These companies probably aren't going to make huge, meaningful changes on their own, not without some serious external pressure.
And that's exactly why the report's final conclusion is so important. It says flat out that voluntary promises and industry guidelines, they're just not cutting it anymore. The task force is arguing that to get real accountability, we need new laws. They're calling for bipartisan legislation to force these platforms to finally make the safety of their youngest users priority #1. And it's really worth remembering who co-led this whole thing. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. I mean, just let that sink in. That fact alone drives home the report's main message. This isn't a tech problem. It's a fundamental public health problem. Which brings us back to that big, critical question. Who is ultimately responsible for our kids' digital well-being? Is it the parents? Is it the tech industry? The government? Well, according to this report, the answer is a definitive yes. It's all of them. And it makes it crystal clear that a safer digital future for our kids just isn't possible unless everyone shares that responsibility and finally starts working together.